All right, so it's March. You know what that means. Every little stupid thing is green. Every dumb person seems to be Irish. The NBA are closing down Magic City nights, which is ridiculous and might need its own segment on the next show. And oh yeah, let the madness begin. Love to say it. I'm Steve Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan, a proud alumni of the back-to-back regular season Big East champion St. John's University. And this, as you all know, this is my favorite time of year and the most wonderful time of the year. Let the madness begin.
I'm Anthony Strait. I have half a voice, and on behalf of myself and Rabbi, we are the proud alumni of
Roll
the
Pride.
Hofstra Pride right now, who is right now in the semifinals of the Colonial Athletic Conference tournament. So, roll Pride, baby.
All right, this is the bracketology special about the sports lines. The ball is tipped, and there you are, going through this championship week in NCAA college basketball and thinking you're an expert watching it. Tonight, we're taking you to bracketology school. We'll talk about the teams at the top, the middle, and closer to the bottom of the tournament period. Plus, it's conference wars. This time, it's personal. Actually, it's not. We really don't care as much. There, you think you're better than me? You think you're better than Jay? You think you're better than Anthony? Time to like and subscribe to our YouTube and Facebook / on the Sports Lines pages. And then you are free to DM Anthony and Jay with your takes. Not me, though. I won't. We start out with lesson number one of our bracketology segment, the seeds near the top 10 or so, that want to go higher with a good championship week performance. Some of these teams want to get themselves into a number one seed, and some of these teams want to, and I say this childishly, move up to a number two. That's the focus of this segment. And Jay, you get first tip with your pick. The team you're talking about had a tiny bit of success in March and April 1 year ago.
Yeah, that would be AP ranked number 4 Florida, who are the defending national champs. Overall record of 25-6, 16-2 in the SEC, 11-5 in quadrant one, 7-1 in quadrant two. And number 4 in the net. Ken Palm has them ranked number 4, the plus 35.35 net rating. Wins above bubble has them ranked number 5 plus 8.1, and their projected seeding, according to ESPN's Joe Lunardi, number 1 in the South. Now, the Gators started the season 5-4. 3 of those losses were to top 5 teams, losing to number 2 Arizona on a neutral court to open the season. Then won 4 straight to Q4s. North Florida and Merrimack, sandwiching a Q1, Miami of Florida, and a Q2, Florida State. Then they lost 3 of their next 4, with all of the losses being Q1s either on a neutral court, TCU and Rabbi's pals, number 6 UConn, or on the road at number 1 Duke. But since that December 9 loss to the Huskies at Madison Square Garden, the Gators have been one of the best teams in the nation, going 20-2, winning their last 11 games in a row. That is the longest active winning streak of any power conference team, giving them back-to-back 25-win seasons for the first time since they ran off 4 straight seasons of 25 wins from 2010-11 to 2013-14, making it to the Elite Eight in the first 3 of those seasons and the Final Four in the fourth. It also gives them a solid case for the final NCAA number 1 seed heading into the SEC Conference Tournament, especially with UConn losing their Big East regular season finale. If SEC regular season awards and honors are any indication, another Gator men's basketball title repeat could be in the offing. Head coach Todd Golden was named SEC Coach of the Year, the 4th Gator head coach to earn the award. Center Ruben Chinglilu was named SEC Defensive Player of the Year, finishing the regular season 2nd in the nation with a 31 flat defensive rating per Bart Torvik. And he was also the SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year. He's the 2nd Gator to pull off that double. He also made All SEC second team and the SEC All Defense team. Guard Urban Clavisar was named SEC 6th Man of the Year, and forward Thomas Haw, who as the 6th man on last year's title team, made the West All Region All Tournament team. He made All SEC first team this season after leading Florida in scoring at 17.2 points per game on 47.1% shooting from the floor. Now, Florida won the SEC regular season title by 3 games over number 17 Arkansas, and gets a double bye into the quarterfinals of the conference tournament, so they don't play until Friday. But they've been playing like a number 1 seed for a while now and shouldn't fall any further than the 2 line if they don't win the SEC tournament. Granted, UConn's top 3 wins over Number 4, Florida. Number 14, Kansas. And number 9, Illinois. All on neutral courts are better wins than Florida's top 3 wins of unranked Kentucky, who haven't been in the top 25 since February 15. And number 22, Vanderbilt on the road, as well as Arkansas at home. But if the Gators at least make the SEC tournament final, I can't see them not being the NCAA's 4th number 1 seed, especially with them ending the regular season at number 4 in Ken Palm's rankings, while UConn dropped to number 11. Add in Florida winning the SEC regular season title in the number 1 ranked conference in the net. Big East is ranked 5th, along with having 12 quadrant wins to UConn's 7, as well as having no losses outside quadrant 1 or quadrant 2. And that's a number 1 seed looking resume to me. We'll see what the committee says come Selection Sunday, but I'll think they'll agree, especially if the Gators do win out in the SEC tournament.
I think the only problem is, and I'll just say it now so I don't belittle it later on. And when I talk about UConn, is the head-to-head. The head-to-head did happen in December, but it is head-to-head.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Florida's resume over the last few weeks reads as a number 1, and I think the eye test shows that they are 100% in the top 4 teams in the nation. There might be a gap between 3 and 4, but you want to try to face the defending national champions at the peak of their powers right now? I don't think anybody does.
If you do, I got to wonder what you're smoking.
Speaking of teams who's smoking the good packs going on to this championship week, Michigan State, outside of anybody named Michigan this season, hasn't been a little brother to anybody. And Anthony, they have a very good chance of a high seed come Selection Sunday.
Yeah, they're 25-5, 15-4 coming out of the Big East. You got the qualifications. 9-6 in quad 1 games. That includes victories over Arkansas, Kentucky, North Carolina, Nebraska, and just recently Purdue. 5-0 in quad 2 games. And of course, a combined 11-0 in quads 3 and 4. As far as number 8 in Ken Palm, number 11 in overall in the net. The key victories against Purdue and Indiana actually propelled Michigan State from a projected number 4 to a projected number 2 on according to Joe Lodori's bracketology. And they've secured a triple bye in the Big Ten tournament. So they're currently sitting as number 2 in the Big Ten tournament. Now, for Michigan State, there was a slight window of opportunity. Now, a lot of things had to happen for them to even be considered for that last number 1 seed in the tournament. After UConn lost on Saturday, there was a sliver of hope, but it required beating a team they hadn't beaten this season, which was the Michigan Wolverines, and that didn't happen again on Sunday, losing 90-80 after they had a lead in the second half of that game. But now with that loss, right now they're sitting at a number 2. But to maintain number 2, or at least keep from falling to further than number 3, they're going to have to get at least rack up a couple of wins in the Big Ten tournament. At least get to the semifinals, even get to the final. I think that would lock them into a number 2. Michigan State, they have the quality wins. Like I said, Illinois, Nebraska, and Purdue. They also. And I think if they're able to put up a strong tournament showing, maybe win it all, they're not getting number 1, but at the very least, they're going to lock up a number 2 and avoid falling no longer to the 3 seed.
I think the one big thing to note is the competition that they have is literally inside their own conference. They're the 7th, according to Lenardi, they're the 7th overall seed. Number 8 is Illinois, number 10 is Nebraska, and number 12 is Purdue. So if any of those 3 teams make the finals, and Michigan State has the triple bye number 2 in the Big Ten tournament, I think they should stay as a number 2, but again, it's going to be a 2 or a 3 most likely, and they'll always have Tom Izzo and March vibes in there.
Outside, and that's the thing too.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody want to bet against. We say this every year. You really want to bet
against Tom Izzo in March. It should be its own hashtag at this point.
Unless I'm putting him in my bracket. But the good thing is, I will say this. I mentioned again, there are 3 of top teams in the nation, Arizona, Duke, and Michigan, right now that have really gone head and shoulders above everybody else, and that's half of Michigan State's losses. So that shows a very if everybody says the quality loss is always better than the quality win, they have the quality losses right there. Okay, so Jay referred to it a little bit earlier. Florida and UConn were actually, in a lot of people's minds, tied for that fourth overall number one going into the weekend. But let's first of all talk about the resume of Connecticut. 27-4, 11th in Ken Palm, top 10 of the nation in the polls. Offensive rating of 28th, defensive rating of 11th. It's been interesting. The strength of schedule, obviously, it takes a hit because the Big East is not as strong as they have been in years past. They are only a 3 to 4 bid league at most this year. But when you look at the schedule for UConn, there is good stuff. Let's talk about the good stuff first, and we'll get to the semi-bad stuff. So quad 1, 7-2. The only two losses being to Arizona and a loss at home on the road against St. John's. But the wins that they have, BYU, Illinois, at Kansas, the neutral site win at Madison Square Garden against Florida. They swept Seton Hall, who has been a bubble team. They swept Villanova. They basically took care of most of their business. I say most of because they've had a couple of flaws over the last few weeks. Now, quad 2, they had a loss in this. Quad 3, first of all, they had a loss against Creighton at home. That's not good, but it did lead to them having their best stretch of the season. And then they play probably their, if not their worst game of the year, definitely their second worst game of the year against Marquette on Saturday, a team that is currently 91st or was 91st in Ken Palm going into said game and 85th now. This was just a disaster for UConn in terms of what they needed to do. The first game, Alex Karabian, their star, didn't even have a field goal from the field in the entire game. He only scored 2 points. And this UConn team has lacked a little bit of a killer instinct late in the season. And that's one of the reasons why they're closer to not even being the two in somewhere like the East than they are being the final number one seed. Where they want to be now, first of all, their path in the Big East tournament actually leads them to a possible rematch against Marquette in the quarterfinals. They have a bye. That would be Thursday. The path could lead them to another matchup against Villanova, played one game close in Stores, played a pretty dominant game in Philadelphia against Villanova, and then a possible third matchup with St. John's, which would be next Saturday. And it's going to be interesting because UConn, for all of the dominance that they had in the conference this year at many points, they've looked like the best team for most of this year. They don't even have a share of the Big East title. St. John's got it outright because of that Marquette loss. And I think UConn 100% needs to win the Big East to even be considered for that fourth number one. But now, because of what happened on Saturday, they're going to need Florida to lose anytime in the SEC tournament because that loss will still be a little bit lower than it would be usually. And they probably need Houston to also not win the Big 12 because of how good the Big 12 has been this year. So the destiny is out of UConn's hands. I think their best case scenario is obviously that fourth number one seed. Their second best case scenario is being the number one in Florida's bracket and staying away from the Big Three. And the worst case scenario is a trip to the East and finding themselves in Duke's bracket, which, I mean, for UConn fans like myself, it's always good to play Duke in a regional final, but I think Duke has been, at least at the end of the season, head and shoulders above everybody else. So UConn has a little bit to play for this week, guys.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let us move on. Next up, class, the middle of the pack teams who want to break out with the Big Champ Week. These are the one teams that may want to play a number 12 seed instead of playing against the number 11 seed. And let's not tell everybody that 11 seeds only have 5 more wins in the first round than the 12 seed does. So we need to make this segment sound interesting. All right. Jay, you have a lead here. You've seen
Yeah.
North Carolina all year. You know that they've been going through a little bit of issues, especially health wise. Where do you see them this week and going further?
Yeah.
Yep.
uh, the Heels are AP's number 19th ranked team, 24-7 overall, 12-6 in the ACC, 6-7 in quadrant one. My niece and nephew will never let me hear the end of that. 5-0 in Q2. Number 23 in the net. Ken Palm has them ranked number 30 plus 21.07 net rating. Wins above bubble has them at number 19 plus 5.4. And Joe Lunardi projects them as a number 6 seed in the Midwest region. The Tar Heels, as you said, Rabbi, I have watched them all season, and they are a weird team in that we really haven't seen a lot of them at their best and or full strength, and we won't for the rest of March, however long their postseason run lasts, as sensational freshman forward Caleb Wilson has been ruled out for the rest of the season after breaking his right thumb while dunking in practice right before UNC's regular season finale loss to Duke. Wilson, the Tar Heels' leading scorer at 19.8 per game and rebounder at 9.4, had missed the previous 6 games with a fractured left hand, which he injured against Miami back on February 10. Wilson, who is a likely top 3 pick in this year's NBA draft, was also averaging 2.7 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1.4 blocks per game. Before fracturing his left hand, Wilson was leading the nation in dunks while simultaneously leading the Tar Heels to some marquee wins, including over number 1 Duke on Seth Trimble's game-winning 3 from the corner with 0.4 seconds left. Number 14 Kansas, and now unranked Kentucky, though they were ranked 18th at the time of the Tar Heels win. Saturday's loss at Duke snapped a 4-game win streak against AP ranked opponents, dropping North Carolina's record against AP ranked opponents to 5-2. And while UNC has responded well in Wilson's absence, going 5-2 and going 10-3 down the stretch, including a Q1 win over number 24 Louisville, and Q2 wins over Virginia Tech and Clemson. Louisville and Clemson are expected to be NCAA tournament teams, while Vatek is on the bubble heading into the ACC tournament. Lunardi currently has them among his first 4 out. So those wins add to a solid March Madness resume, but the Heels arguably have a much lower ceiling as they enter the ACC tournament, where they are the number 4 seed, as well as when the big dance begins without Wilson available. Now, this is what I mean when I say that we haven't really seen much of the Tar Heels at their best and or at full strength and won't have a chance to going forward. Here's UNC's records in full games without their top 3 scorers. Wilson, 19.8 a game. Center Henri Vassar, 16.3 a game. And guard Seth Trimble, 14 points per game. Without Trimble, 8-1. Without Wilson, 4-1. Without Wilson and Vassar together, the two missed a pair of games, went 1-1. Those records run from solid to pretty damn impressive. Here's the thing, though. With all 3 in the lineup, the Heels are 11-4, and that version of UNC is a team that could get to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, but that's not the version we'll see in the ACC tournament and going forward. If UNC's part of the ACC tournament bracket goes chalk, they'll play number 5 seed Clemson, who they beat last week, coming from 3 down at the half to win by 4 in the quarters, and if they beat the Tigers again, they get another crack, likely have another crack at Duke in the semis. A second loss to Duke probably won't drop them in the seeding, especially being shorthanded without Wilson. But if they somehow manage to knock off the Blue Devils and make it to the tournament final against either number 2 seed and 10th ranked Virginia, who they beat on the road back in January, or number 3 seed Miami, who they lost to on the road in that game where Wilson got injured the first time, that may be enough to bump them up a seed line regardless of the outcome. If they somehow manage to win the conference tournament, that might be enough to bump them up to a 4 seed. It's a question of how the committee views who how the committee views the Heels are without their best player.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, I stepped on my tongue enough today.
I would say what's interesting about this team is it's kind of like the Kenny Martin principle, although we do have a decent resume of games without Wilson where they went 5-1 and had one good half against Duke on Saturday. Be very interesting to see what happens if they get to Duke and they even keep it close. Will that be enough for the committee to put them in the 4 or 5 range? I can't see them any higher, though.
No,
I
but
don't think there's not enough that they've done to get any higher.
no, but I mean, as we all recall from last year, the fact that they played Duke solid in that ACC tournament matchup for the first half and partway into the second was probably
Why
what
they got in?
probably cinched it for the committee to let them be one of the last teams into the tournament last year. So we'll see how it goes.
They did enough to at least give themselves a little boost of that rewarding by actually having a decent run
Yep.
in the tournament. Anthony, a shout out to Miss Sharon to go along with your pick in this teaching lesson. Let's talk about Bama.
Yeah, Alabama 23-8, 13-5 in the SEC conference. 7-7 quad one wins, 9-1 in quad two. Quad one wins include a win over St. John's in on the road. Um, against Illinois, Kentucky, Oklahoma, Auburn, which was just recently as well, Arkansas and Georgia, and 9-1 in quad two games, and a combined 7 on quad three and four. Actually ended the regular season on a 9-1 stretch, an 8-game winning streak that was recently snapped in a 98-88 loss to Georgia. Currently ranked 16th in the AP poll and has been the highest 6 in the BPI poll. Now, for Alabama, Joe Lombardi has them as number 3 out in the Western region. But to maintain that, they're going to have to put on a strong story in the SEC tournament. But one of the weaknesses and one of the things that Georgia exploited, they're a very undersized team. They don't have a lot of size up front. They were badly out rebounded. They're not a great defensive team. They're actually towards a lower range as far as the nation. I think they're 65th overall defensively. Don't force a lot of turnovers, which is almost 300, like I think 365th in the country overall as far as collegiate level. But they're gonna have to do a strong show. They're gonna have to be able to show that they're not just an offensive firepower power team, that they can play some defense, they can force the turnovers, they can actually try to control the boards. Right now, it's about really the smell test as far as the selection committee. And a couple of wins in the SEC tournament, I think that I keep them above the 4 line. But to stay as a 3, I think they're really gonna have to show not that they just win games, but they can overcome some of these shortcomings, no pun intended. These
Hmm.
shortcomings are as far as being able to match up against some of the bigger teams that they're going to run into, not just in the SEC, but maybe in the tournament overall itself. But be able to play some defense. I mean, you're not going to outscore everybody. I mean, we see time and time again. In March, the game slows down dramatically, and you're not gonna. You may not. You might have a game where those shots aren't falling. You might have to get stops. So, Alabama, the last 5 tournaments under Nate Oates has been able to get to at least the second weekend. And if they want to at least be able to put themselves in a strong position to extend that streak, they're going to have to really put on a good showing for the selection committee in the SEC tournament this week.
9 out of 10 for Alabama since a loss to Florida on Feb 1. Interesting bracket for them. They could play the team who they lost to in that 9 out of 10 range, Georgia, on Friday night. And then they could face Arkansas in
Hmm.
the semifinals. And that was the game of the year back on February 18th. 115 double overtime game. It was an insane game on both sides of the ball, and definitely something that'll be interesting to see if those two teams play again. Okay. Uh, Jay has a lot of teams that are in this region, so I'm going to steal one of them for myself and take a look at the Kansas Jayhawks. And there has been no team who has been making headlines because of their most likely number 1 pick in the draft, Darren Peterson, because of his ability slash inability to play a full game this
Inability.
year. That's why I said slash inability. It's not always ability. The reason why I say ability is because he's actually logged 30 minutes in 4 of his last 5 games, 31.2 points in that stretch. And he was in a shooting slump. He shot 35.9% from the field and 32.7% from 3-point range in his previous 6 games before doing some damage last weekend against Kansas State. The resume, it's interesting. It's all over the place. Now, it's all over the place in terms of quad 1, quad 2, quad 3. They're pretty damn good. Quad 2, 7-1. They're actually, if you count what quad 2 and quad 4 is, they're 14-1. Quad 1, they're 8-8. But the losses read is pretty damn good. North Carolina, Duke, neutral court. Tennessee, no, they didn't lose to Tennessee. I'm sorry. They lost to UConn at home, a rarity, by the way, in the Bill Self era. They've lost to teams who are in the middle of that Big 12 pack, UCF, West Virginia. The worst of them all might be Cincinnati, which is actually considered their only quad 2 and under loss this entire year. Kansas at home are, let's just say, world beaters. They gave Arizona their first loss of the year when they played them at home. They beat Iowa State by 21 when they played them at home. They beat Houston by 13 when they played them at home. Unfortunately for Bill Self,
the fog.
Yeah, unfortunately for Bill Self, you can't play all of your games in the fog during the NCAA tournament, and you can't play them all on Big Monday, where he seems to have one of the most sterling records I've ever seen a coach have on a certain day. 41 in a row.
Yeah.
41 in a row, which is insanity. The road losses are bad, though. The same teams that they played, by the way, they had to pretty much make those games up on the road. Lost by 23 at Arizona, lost by 18 at Iowa State. So this team is a little Jekyll and Hyde. You don't know what Darren Peterson you're going to get every single day. You don't know what this team is going to do in this tournament. They are currently a 3 seed. I'm sorry, they're currently a 4 seed. I'm sorry, in Lunardi's bracket right now. There are 4 in this Lunardi bracket that I've had. They've been
you're right. You're right.
In a bunch of different stuff. They would be right now in the Midwest division, which would give them a possible Sweet 16 matchup against Michigan if it gets that far. Not great, but it's going to be interesting to see because this Kansas team has the talent to make a run. In the Big 12 tournament, they are the 3 seed. That is a double bye. Possible matchup against TCU in the quarters. Possible matchup against Houston in the semifinals. Reach the finals of what is probably, as we'll talk about in our final segment, one of the best conferences in America, and that should lock up a 3 seed. Win the whole damn thing, and your possibilities of being a high 3 to even a low 2 are on the table. But there's a lot of options for this Kansas team. I don't think they would fall to a 5 just because of the resume that they have. But if they do, they might make a big run. They might lose to a 12 seed. They might lose to a 13 seed. Darren Peterson might play 20 minutes. Darren Peterson might play the whole game to spite us all. I don't know. And you know what? That's the beauty of March. We don't know either. And it'll be very interesting to see what this Kansas team does because Bill Self has not had the most sterling of record over the last few years since winning the whole thing in 2022. I think it's time for him to make a deep run this March, and this could be the team that does so. All right, let's move on to that lower level that we've talked about, affectionately talked about as the bubble. So if you look at the definition, the second definition of the bubble is used to refer to a good or fortunate situation that is isolated from reality or unlikely to last. So needless to say, these teams are not in the best situation. So the dictionary people are a bunch of damn liars. Anthony, let's start by talking about the New Mexico Lobos.
Yeah, if there's a team that could potentially have played themselves out of a tournament in the last week, it is the New Mexico Lobos. Here's the thing, and this is the craziness of college basketball in March. They're 22-9. They're actually second in the Mountain West Conference. One problem: They're 13-7 in the conference, and their resume and their recent losses of three straight losses have them now going from on the bubble being the last four in to being the first four out among the first four out teams. But and here's the thing: they're 2-6 in quad one games. I mean, that alone is going to put you in the danger zone of missing the tournament overall. But it doesn't help when they lost recently to three of the last four games to end the regular season, including the last game against Utah State, a game they desperately needed to have to at the very least help themselves and get off the bubble, and at the very least put themselves in a better position at lost bid. But the only two assists in quad one games, 6-1 in quad two, the 4-2 in quad three. However, one of those losses came against Colorado State back on March 4th, and they're right now the seed is number three in the Mountain West Conference tournament, and had a first round bye. At this point, they played themselves into a position where the Mountain West is only going to have two bids: the winner, the regular season winner, and the winner of the tournament. That's pretty much it. One tournament winner and one at-large bid, and it's between New Mexico and San Diego State. San Diego State has been one of those bubble teams as well, and between the two, New Mexico may have a slight edge, but right now, they're one of the last four teams out. They're going to need a serious showing in this conference tournament. They may have to actually win the entire thing to at least solidify themselves a chance to at least get into the tournament. And here's the other thing too, and this is a caveat. Miami now we'll talk about Miami, Ohio in this show, of course. But what happens if Miami, Ohio does not win their conference tournament, and suddenly they take one of the at-large bids that's available? That's one less at-large bid for everyone else. So if your team like New Mexico that's on a bubble, you're kind of hoping Miami, Ohio wins the tournament so that they're not stealing an at-large bid that could go to someone else. Remember last year there were several at-large bids that were actually kind of taken away came championship week. So New Mexico is kind of they played themselves into the mercy of having to kind of win or else, but also going to have to watch what goes on among the other teams if they don't win a tournament or at least get to the final and put on a good showing to see where the fate may lie come Session Sunday.
There's really no good wins, by the way, in any of their
No,
non-conference. The VCU game back on December 10th might be their best, but outside of that, this is a team that is really going to have this one out. By the way, New Mexico is in the San Diego State is actually in the next four out as the fourth out team. Mountain West being a one bid conference just shows how the mid majors can taketh and the mid majors can giveth
Mm-hmm.
in all certain situations. And Jay, speaking of the mid majors, the biggest story of them all is going to be talked about right now. Anthony referred to it. Miami of Ohio goes into their conference tournament as an undefeated team, the only one in the country currently. At least last poll, they were 19th. Obviously, they moved up in the AP. You'll talk about them right now. What happens if they don't win their conference tournament, Jay?
Yeah, actually, they when the AP poll that came, the finally regular season AP poll came out today, they were actually ranked 20th, so they actually dropped
Well, they
this
went down. Of
week.
course, they
Yeah.
did.
As you said, 31-0 overall, 18-0 in the MAC, 0-0 in quad one. They had no quad one games at all. 2-0 in quad two, only two quad two games. The bulk of their record is quad three, quad four, where they're 26-0. They're 53rd and number 53 in the net. KenPom has them at number 91 plus 8.92 net rating. Wins above bubble, they're 27th plus 3.4. And currently, Joe Lunardi's projecting them as the number 11 seed in the Midwest region. Now, normally, we don't look at a mid-major team that won their conference's regular season title But when that team is the only undefeated team in Division One, becoming the first team in 35 years to start a season 30-0, the first men's basketball team to finish a Division One regular season undefeated since Gonzaga in 2021, and the third team in Division One history to enter its conference tournament 31-0, joining the 2013-14 Wichita State and 2014-15 Kentucky. And yet it's possible they could miss the cut line if they don't win their conference tournament. Well, that team is worthy of a bubble watch look. The last time the MAC got more than one team into the NCAA tournament was all the way back in 1998 rather, 99. That was the year that MAC Player of the Year and second team All-America forward Wally Szczerbiak, now of CBS Sports, led the Red Hawks to the Sweet 16 after knocking off Washington and Utah in the first two rounds. The last time the Red Hawks made the NCAAs was 2006-2007, where as a 14 seed, they came within 2 points of upsetting third-seeded Oregon. Can they get in without winning the MAC Conference Tournament? Should they? It's the latest chapter of an age-old debate, whether a mid-major team needs the automatic bid that comes within their conference tournament in order to get a spot in the big dance. We've seen it before where the one seed, which goes to the regular season champ, gets upset, loses out as the selection committee invariably gives an at-large bid to another middle-of-the-pack power conference team. In the case of Miami of Ohio, though, an undefeated season should give them some leeway with the committee, despite being outside the cut line in the metrics used by the primary predictive ratings and strength of schedule sites like KenPom, where their strength of schedule net rating is number 274 out of 365 Division I teams. Their non-conference schedule rating is the fifth worst in Division I, and they have three of their victories are against non-Division I teams. Look, on the surface, they have the all that aside, on the surface, they have the resume. That 31-0 record, it's the most wins in Division I, theoretically would be pretty hard for the selection committee to ignore. And they've never done so in the past. Since the NCAA tournament was expanded to 64 teams in 1985, no team with more than 28 wins or less than 4 losses has ever missed out on March Madness. The most wins Miami can accrue by Selection Sunday would be 34 if they win the MAC tournament, which would make them 34-0. The most losses they can accrue, 1, which at worst, should they lose their opening round game on Thursday, would make them 31-1. Granted, the net ranking of 53 would be high for an at-large bid, but San Diego State was number 52 last season and got in as one of the first 4. The glaring lack of Q1 wins, they have none because no team that would qualify as a Q1 opponent would play them, and their best non-conference win is a Q2 win on the road against Wright State, which recently clinched the Horizon League regular season title. Can't be helped, but it also shouldn't be held against them. They're 21st in strength of record and 27th in wins above bubble, which is a new metric that I've been using up to this point. Now I'm going to explain it. It's a new metric that the committee will be using this year, and according to them, it'll carry a lot of weight. Wins above bubble rates you against your schedule and how much better you did versus what the win expectation would be for an average bubble team. Based on that, Miami has won 3.4 more games per wins above bubble than the teams populating the bubble watch cut line would be expected to win if they played the Red Hawks schedule. Being in the top 40 in wins above bubble should be enough for an at-large bid. Being in the top 35 theoretically makes you a lock for the NCAAs. Even losing in the MAC tournament shouldn't knock the Red Hawks out of the wins above bubble top 40. Here's some other things that make their resume NCAA tournament worthy, regardless of whether or not they win the MAC tournament, in my opinion. The Red Hawks have the best field goal shooting percentage in the nation, 52.7, including shooting 61.5 on twos. They're 8th in three-point percentage at 39.2. They average 90.9 points per game, second in the nation behind only Alabama, and their 17 points per game margin of victory is 7th best in Division I. They're the first team in Division I history to be undefeated, average 90-plus points per game, shoot 50-plus% from the field, and average 10-plus threes per game. I'll leave you with this final point, and it's something the selection committee should pay heed to. This is Miami's first outright MAC regular season championship since 1994-95. According to college hoop stat whiz Evan Miyakawa, The preseason chances of Miami going undefeated, even against the schedule with that bad a ranking, were 1 in 3,740. And the argument could be made that those odds are still too low when you factor in the most impressive thing about the streak that no one mentions. The Red Hawks won 20 straight games after losing Evan Ipsaro, their starting point guard and one of the team's three best players, to an ACL injury sustained in the team's conference opener on December 20th. If that doesn't seal an invite to the big dance for the nation's 20th ranked team, I don't know what more will. But here's hoping they win out in the MAC tournament and make all this a moot point come Selection Sunday.
Rumor is 80 teams said no to scheduling Miami of Ohio this.
20. I'll get to that later.
Oh, great! Have to do that. Well, it's yeah. I have the 20 emails. I know Pittsburgh, Miami, Wisconsin, and Marquette were three of them because someone literally sent an open records file out there and saw the actual requests that Miami of Ohio sent to other teams. We have more to talk about this in our final segment. And now I'm going to give you another boring talk about another middling team in a power conference that has a losing record in conference that is shockingly still first team out on multiple bracketologies, and that is the Indiana Hoosiers. No disrespect to the Indiana Hoosiers, by the way. They've had a pretty decent season, 18-13. It is a season. Let's just talk about the metrics first before we talk about some specifics here. 3-11 in quad one. Their biggest win is probably a home victory against Purdue earlier in the season, and then they got that beaten match later in the year by a 29-point loss away against Purdue. They beat UCLA, who's a tournament team, by 1. They beat Wisconsin, who will be a tournament team and one of the hotter teams in the nation, by 1 as well. Quad 2, they're also not great. They're 3-2, probably their 2 worst losses of the year. An away loss against USC and a 4-point loss at home against the Fighting Wildcats of Northwestern. Not great, Bob. Now, if you look at the schedule, it's not terrible. The losses are not bad. Like Kentucky, they lost in there, but there's just a kind of really unsettling feeling when you see 2 4-game losing streaks on this schedule this year. But again, those 2 4-game losing streaks, by the way, 6 of them are to Nebraska, Michigan State, Michigan, Illinois, Purdue, and Michigan State again. However, this Indiana team has had chances to make those statements. They had a game at Ohio State this weekend, who had been living on the bubble for a while. They moved themselves a little bit back up in that situation, and then lost 91-78. What do you have to say about this Indiana team is they have a little bit of an uphill battle against them. It's, again, not just dealing with the fact that they're going to have to deal with the teams that are on the bubble this week, teams like Santa Clara, SMU, VCU, the equally impressive 16-15 Auburn, Virginia Tech, Stanford, New Mexico, Cincinnati, California, Oklahoma, San Diego State. These are teams that you're just going to have to hope don't make big runs in the tournament themselves. Now, Indiana could put them all in their own hands. They are only getting a single bye in the Big Ten tournament. They'll face the winner of Northwestern, one of the teams that beat Indiana this year, and Penn State in round 2. But there's a possible matchup league in there with the 7th-ranked team in the Big Ten in Purdue in round number 3, and then a possibility to face Nebraska in the quarterfinals. Win that Purdue match, that gets them on in the vicinity of making it to the tournament. Win that Nebraska game, and you're going probably to March Madness. But Indiana is just a list of all of those teams that just can fly in the lower part of the pack of a conference that's really, really good, not have a real quality win to show for it, and then screw everyone's bracket when they win 2 games and make it to the Sweet 16. But do they deserve to be there is a completely another question. And right now, the answer is probably not. All right. Finally tonight, the battle for conference supremacy. Choose your fighter. Last year, the SEC had 14 teams in the Madness of March, and every regional final featured an SEC team. Every single one. Two made the Final Four. This year, the Big 12 and SEC are projected with the most teams right now in the tournament. Anthony, you have a third choice for yourself as you tell us who you think is the best conference this year in the NCAA.
What are we doing here? I mean, you don't talk about March if you're not talking about the Bluebirds, the Blue Bloods, that is the ACC. Are you kidding me? There's a reason why I call Atlantic Avenue Tobacco Road North. All right, we have we hosted the ACC tournament for a couple of years, Mike. For the kiddies out
Which
there,
was a big mistake, by the way, but
Yeah,
that's a
I'm
whole
sorry.
for a whole
The
other
ACC
time.
tournament
it always been
should be in
Greensboro.
Stay in North
Greensboro and
Carolina.
only in
No,
Greensboro.
North Carolina. I will give North Carolina, but Greensboro, yes, is probably the most likely choice. Bayheim, yes.
yes, yes, I would agree with you there. But it was nice to see the ACC tournament without having to travel to Greensboro for a change. But yes, it deserves to be there. But look, the ACC is all about the month of March. Just talk about the history. 99 wins total between NCAA tournaments 2015, 2023. Three of the last eight national championships come out in the ACC. You're talking about obviously the Blue Bloods, the powerhouses. You got Duke, you got Jays, North Carolina Tar Heels, you got Syracuse, you got Notre Dame, you have Louisville. Uh, this year, after a couple years, they've had a couple of down years in ACC. This season has seen a reemergence. 19 to the top 50 in the net rankings. It was 16 quad one wins combined in this conference. They actually shifted back to an 18 game schedule to actually to allow more flexibility and to kind of strengthen the quality of play within the conference. This is a conference that's going to see eight, maybe nine teams get into the tournament. That well, yeah, eight definitely, eight strong definitely. But this is what March Madness is all about. I mean, we don't talk about the NCAA tournament without the Duke Blue Devils, without the University of North Carolina Tar Heels, and seeing Louisville be as strong as it is. I mean, right now you have basically four teams um, that you have Duke, you have Virginia, Miami, North Carolina, Clemson that are at least above 12 wins above in the conference. I mean, the ACC has definitely had a renaissance this year. So and it's obvious March. I mean, you don't talk March Madness about the ACC. So of course it's the best conference in basketball.
Yeah, so it's interesting enough to see what honestly the best stories are in the ACC this year. If you even look past Duke and North Carolina, Virginia has had a renaissance this year. It actually knows how to play offense for the first time in I think the modern era. You have Miami, who is definitely kind of gone from the dregs to being the three seed in this tournament, and they're going to probably be a top six, seven seed in the tournament itself. Clemson's been much better. Louisville has had two consecutive sustainable years of a team that was also knocking on death's door. And even SMU right now has actually in the tournament field, according to some people, and they're the 11th seed in the ACC tournament. And that's not even counting also stories like Florida State, who's looked really good at the end of the season. They're not going to make a tournament, but they made a big go around. They look pretty good, but Jay, the Big 12 has looked a lot better, in my opinion.
Yeah, just as a point of contention, the ACC is number 4 in the net, and in terms of conference ranking, and Lunardi's projecting them to get 8 bids as of now. Yeah. As much as I talk about, as Anthony referred to them, my University of North Carolina Tar Heels and my alma mater, the St. John's University out of the Big East. The other team that I watch is the Kansas Jayhawks. So I pay a lot of as much attention to the Big 12 as those other two conferences. The conference is number 2 in the overall net rankings. but it has the best non-conference record, 165-41, and win percentage, 801. 5 teams in the AP top 25. Number 2, Arizona. Number 5, Houston. Number 7, Iowa State. Number 14, Kansas. Number 16, Texas Tech. 5 teams in KenPom's top 20. Number 3, Arizona. Number 6, Houston. Number 7, Iowa State. Number 17, Texas Tech. Number 19, Kansas. 5 teams in Bart Torvik's top 20 wins above bubble rankings. Arizona at number 3 plus 11.6. Houston at number 6 plus 7.9. Iowa State at 14 plus 6.4. Kansas at 16 plus 5.9. And Texas Tech at 20 plus 5.2. And 5 teams in Warren Nolan's top 20 in the net rankings. Arizona at 3, Houston at 7, Iowa State at 8, Texas Tech at 15, Kansas at 19. As we head into conference tournament week, all 5 of those teams have pretty much locked up NCAA tournament bids, as each has a 100% in percentage using Bart Torvik's TourneyCast, which blends both the team's current resume and forward-looking projections. Though it will be interesting to see how the committee seeds Texas Tech, which has now gone 3-3 to end the regular season, including losing their last 2, since losing star forward JT Toppin for the year to an ACL injury sustained on February 17. BYU, 25th in KenPom, 24th in wins above, 24 wins above the bubble, 24 in the net. And TCU, 44 at KenPom, 35 at wins above bubble, and 40 in the net. Also have 100% in percentages per Torvik's TourneyCast. BYU is considered an NCAA lock by most bracketologists, including me, and are projected as a number 6 seed by Joe Lunardi, while TCU moved themselves off the first 4 and into the field of 64, having closed the regular season, winning 8 of their last 9 and their last 5 in a row, including a Q1 road win over Texas Tech, sandwiched between Q2 wins over Kansas State on the road and Cincinnati at home, which may have been a de facto NCAA play-in game. Lunardi now has them as the number 9 seed in the South region. All of this alone likely makes the Big 12 at the very least a 7-bid conference. UCF could make it 8. They have a 58.6% in percentage in Torvik's TourneyCast. Their resume and metrics should be enough. 20-10 overall, 9-9 in the Big 12. KenPom has them at number 53, right on the cut line. WAB, number 40, again, right on the cut line. Net, 51, near the cut line for an at-large. 10 Q1, Q2 wins, only a single Q3, Q4 loss. Most bracketologists believe they've done enough based on their resume and metrics to put them on the right side of the cut line, and Lunardi currently has them as the 11th seed in the West region. However, they come into the Big 12 tournament having lost 6 of their last 9, including each of their last 3. They managed to hang on to the 8th seed, so they escape playing a first-round game. But if things go chalk, they'll play number 9 seed Cincinnati in what could amount to an NCAA tournament play-in game. Speaking of the Bearcats, they come into the conference tournament on a 6-2 run to close the regular season, including wins against UCF at home, number 14 Kansas on the road, and Oklahoma State at home, and BYU at home. Losing to TCU in the regular season finale may require them to win at least 1 game in the Big 12 tournament. Cincinnati is the epitome of a bubble team. Lunardi currently has them among his next 4 teams out, and their resume and metrics bear that out. They're just 17-14 overall, 9-9 in the Big 12. KenPom has them at number 42. Wins above bubble has them at number 70, negative 1.6, and the net has them at number 46. They're 8-13 in Q1 and Q2, 9-1 in Q3 and Q4. And while their 3 Q1 wins are significant, over at number 14 Kansas, versus number 7 Iowa State, and versus BYU, those 14 losses against the nation's 62nd toughest schedule does not help their case. Look, with so many locks, the conference tournament will determine whether the selection committee gives the Big 12 more than 8 teams. But I think the best conference in the nation, in my humble opinion, will get at least an 8th team into the big dance when it's all said and done come Selection Sunday. And oh, by the way, Lunardi has them getting 8.
Yep, and for our final team, Lunardi has the Big 10 getting 9. By the way, we're not mentioning even the conference who has the most, and that's the SEC, who is ranked at number 1 on a lot of different people's rollings at 11 teams. However, they only have 1 team in the KenPom top 10. That's Florida at number 4. The Big 10 has 4 teams in Ken Palm's top 10. That's number 2, Michigan, who, as we've talked about, has looked like the best team in the country at certain points this year, with only really only two real stub-toed games. A loss on January 10th at home against Wisconsin by 3, and a loss at a neutral site, which is Washington, D.C. So fuck that. That's not a neutral site if that's close to Durham, by 5. So their 2 losses are by 8 points this year. They have dominating victories. They won against Auburn and they beat them by 30. They went against San Diego State in the bubble team and they beat them by 40. They went against USC when they were ranked and they beat them by 30. Michigan is a team that can run you out of the building pretty much right out of the gate. That's why they are the number 1 team in the bracket. They are the first team since the 1975 Indiana Hoosiers to go undefeated on the road in Big Ten play. Michigan has looked like a Final Four contender. You want more? Here's more. Nebraska is the darling of this year's tournament. They've never won a tournament game up to this point. And this year, they're 26-5. They had an undefeated non-conference schedule, which didn't really amount to a lot in terms of games. They did beat Oklahoma, but they also kind of flattened Creighton. But they didn't lose a game until January 27th when they lost by 3 against Michigan when they were kind of dealing with a bunch of injuries. And then they lost by 9 against Illinois. They've had a little bit of a rough end to the season, only going 6-5, but they were still good enough to get the number 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Anthony has talked about Michigan State. Illinois is kind of also there as well. They have had some big-time quality victories against a fully loaded Texas Tech team earlier in the year. They've beaten Tennessee, and they've had one of the more sterling conference records out there. They've had a 4-4 end to their season, but 3 of their losses were in OT, and that's why they're Ken Palm's 5th-ranked team. We didn't even mention Purdue, who is the 7th seed in their road conference tournament, the 8th seed in Ken Palm. They were the Big Ten favorites going in, and even though they're currently 23-8, they still look pretty good and passed the sniff test out there. So you have 5 teams in the top 12, no teams after that, but once you get to 23, you have 4 more teams, leaving you 9 teams in the top 30. Wisconsin, who has been on fire in the last few weeks, they're going to end up being the 5 seed in the tournament, and some of their wins read like a who's who of just killer wins. They've won at Illinois, they've won at Purdue, they've won at Michigan, and they have taken care of business in a lot of different areas. They've had bad losses here and there. They've lost to Villanova. They lost to Nebraska by 30, but that's a team that Wisconsin, they're going to be on a lot of teams' short list and making a big run. UCLA is 13-7 in conference. Ohio State has had a great run to end the year to pretty much lock up a tournament bid themselves, as they ended up winning their final 3 games, at winning against Purdue by 8 and then winning their final 2 games when they needed to by double digits. Oh, yeah. They're playing day number 3 in the Big Ten tournament because they're the 8th seed. So they only have a double bye, while some teams have a triple bye. If you look at Joe Lunardi's bracket, there are 5 teams, 5, on the 1, 2, or 3 line. Michigan's number 1 right now in the Midwest. Michigan State is the number 2 seed in the East. Illinois is the number 2 seed in the West. Nebraska is the number 3 seed in the South. And Purdue is the number 3 seed in the Midwest. The Big Ten is damn loaded. And even if they don't get Indiana in, they're a part of the first 4 out. They're really the only other team that can get in. The Big Ten has no one even on the last 4 buys line. So they're going to be a 9-bid league, possibly a 10-bid league. I know I was joking about Indiana before not being a deserving tournament team, but the gauntlet of the Big Ten this year has definitely brought a lot of survivors into this NCAA tournament. And again, 9 soldiers are probably going to come out of this conference, and all of them are deservedly so.
Yeah, the Big Ten has 6 teams in the Nets top 25, 9 in the top 35, and as a conference, the Big Ten is number 3 in the net ranking.
Yep. And again, as I said, the SEC is number one in terms of teams that they're probably going to send into the tournament. But again, Big Ten is a lot stronger than the top, although again, Florida looks at times like the best team in the country. All right. To finish up tonight, as Jay so eloquently stated, Miami of Ohio's correct case for making the tournament for the segment before, I'm going to be the loser that just talks about everything surrounding it. Bruce Pearl, about a week ago, as TNT analyst and manipulator of Auburn, having to hire his damn kid right before the season started, said about the following on the Redhawks' candidacy to the NCAA. Are we going to select the 68 most deserving teams, or are we going to select the 68 best teams? Pearl said. If we're going to select the 68 best teams, then Miami of Ohio is going to have to win their tournament to qualify as a champion, because as an at-large, they are not one of the best teams in the country. Cool, Bruce. Guess what? That caused a little bit of a stir, and rightfully so, because I'm not sure if one of the teams who is right now, currently, by the way, in the tournament, in terms of Joe Lunardi's bracketed Auburn, is one of the teams that they're fighting for. Yeah, that's not good. That doesn't look really good. We've got, and so this caused a bit of controversy as Miami AD David Saylor said the following about Bruce's words of wisdom. We've got people online talking about how it's bad for the sport and they'd rather see a 12th place Big Ten team or an 11th place SEC team. I needed to step in and defend the heart and soul of college basketball, the big majors and the magic of March Madness. The disrespect is awful, and you should not be near a TV studio when you show your colors. Even slipped in a we when talking about Auburn. Nice work. End quote. As I mentioned, the apology must be as loud as the disrespect. In an interview with TNT, Pearl had to pay the piper. In an interview with regular season undefeated head coach Miami of Ohio's Travis Steele, Pearl said, I kind of feel like you're Cinderella and I'm the ugly stepmother, right? Well, Bruce, the slipper for Cinderella still fits, and you are truly an ugly stepmother. Pearl had to do a mea culpa and also said that Miami won their way into the tournament. Also, I didn't add this also, as he also did stuff for CBS yesterday as they were hyping up the Big Ten women's basketball tournament championship game between Iowa and UCLA. And he mentioned Iowa's women's basketball. No superstar Caitlin Smith. No Hall of Fame coaches like Lisa Blunder. That's Caitlin Clark and Lisa Blunder, by the way, there for you people. So nice job, Bruce. You know everything about college basketball. For me, Miami of Ohio is out and a team for me. If Miami of Ohio is a truly out to some people and a team like SMU, who just ended their at-large campaign in the regular season to world beaters Florida State, they're still doing good, I swear to God. How about putting in Virginia Tech, who was 2-9 against Quadrant 1 in the Big Dance? Or no, how about the Auburn Tigers? Put them in with a sterling record of 16-15 and 7-11 in conference. Let's do that. The true worry to me is what an undefeated NCAA tournament team from Oxford, Ohio will be subject when they get to the Big Dance. Remember when Wichita State in 2014 got saddled in the round of 32 with 8-seed Kentucky, who ended up being an undefeated team the next year? They ended up going to the national championship game. Stevie Wonder knew that they were underseeded Kentucky, and guess what? Kentucky ended up winning that game. Let's talk about the team before that shocker team, which went to the tournament, the last one to go into the tournament undefeated, at least it's the conference tournament. That was St. Joseph's in 2004, one who was criticized on end, specifically by the late Billy Packer, as not worthy of a 1 seed. I think they did get themselves justice when they got to the regional final against Oklahoma State. Others might not have thought the same thing. Or how about the Gonzaga team in 2021 that went undefeated until the very last game and then got mauled against Baylor? So the legacy of the mid-major undefeated team might be complicated, but no matter what the critics, smart coaches, and Caitlin Smith lover Bruce Pearl says about your candidacy in March, we still salute you teams.
Yeah. Anthony, go ahead. I want to wrap this up.
Yeah, you know what? Seeing Bruce Pearl, never mind shilling for his alma mater and basically using nepotism to get his son the coaching job. But to do it at the expense of a team that has very much been a great story, it's been actually held against them the fact that nobody wanted to play them. They still played the schedule they had together and still went unbeaten. I mean that's a slap in the face to any mid major, let alone Miami of Ohio, to have someone say they're not deserving and use the old college football argument that we see every year of are we getting the 12 best teams and the 12 most deserving? I think it's complete garbage and you know Bruce Pearl has had a history of putting his foot in his mouth and this is just like the latest chapter in that ever growing novel of putting his foot in his mouth. So no, at this point I don't exactly take with Bruce Pearl or any of these analysts, these former coaches slash players or analysts, say I don't really take them seriously. I watched what's on the basketball court, and Miami of Ohio is more than deserving. I hope they win to the tournament. I hope they win this tournament. I hope they conference championship tournament. So every all this nonsense come a mute point.
Go ahead, Jay.
Look, I made my case for why Miami of Ohio deserves to be in the NCAA tournament in our Bubble Watch segment. So I don't have a lot to add here, other than to say that, like Anthony, I'm so done with coaches, media folk, and talking heads applying a dumbass argument from college football to college basketball about whether a national postseason tournament should, as Anthony said, have the best teams or the most deserving. And the primary purveyors of that egocentric stupidity are invariably connected to the SEC in football. But now, with Bruce Pearl running his mouth, it's bled over to SEC men's basketball. SEC folk love to play the hypothetical victories card, spouting such nonsense as Indiana would finish 10th in the SEC and Alabama would kill all these teams. They don't seem to care that there are no facts or data of any kind to back those claims up. Pearl can talk all he wants, but anything he says against the Redhawks in an attempt to make the case for Auburn, his former team now coached by his son, no nepotism there, right, guys? To get an at-large bid should be taken with a large grain of salt, and to be honest, dismissed out of hand as a whole lot of comically based sound and fury, to borrow from Shakespeare, that the selection committee should ignore because noise like this, which is nothing short of utter disrespect for arguably the best story in men's college basketball this season. Here's Pearl's quote, the first one I saw. They're not built for the grind of a Big Ten or even a Big East. In the Big East Conference this year, they finished in the lower half. His attempts to semi-walk it back, hedge, clarify, however you want to put it, came via these quotes. I've said it on 3 or 4 occasions at this point, but no one has noticed. I've said that I'm glad the human element is involved, that I would put one-loss Miami of Ohio team in the field. Absolutely, because they're deserving. I've also said, if you're asking me if I think Miami is one of the 37 best teams that will be in the mix for an at-large bid, no, I do not. I'm not walking anything back. Both things can be true. Nope. Sorry, Bruce. They can't. That's the very definition of two things being mutually exclusive. As I said on our Bubble Watch segment, Miami not having a Q1 game on their schedule and only 2 Q2s, both of which they won, should not be held against them. You can only play who is in front of you, and they beat every team that was in front of them. It's not their fault that 20 power conference teams like Pittsburgh out of the ACC, Ken Palm 99, net 109. Number 23, Wisconsin out of the Big Ten, Ken Palm 23, net 26. Marquette out of the Big East, Ken Palm 86, net 91. And even number 14, Kansas out of the Big 12, Ken Palm 19, net 19. All, in some shape, manner, or form, declined the Redhawks' invitation to a game. Denying Miami of Ohio an at-large bid if they don't win the MAC tournament would tell every non-power conference school that there's no point to playing the regular season. And it would deny us the chance to see how far this Cinderella story could go in favor of forcing us to watch a completely mediocre team from a bigger league get bounced, likely before the second weekend. I know why Bruce Pearl might want that, but I sure as hell don't. Neither should anyone who truly loves March Madness.
Agreed. And it's always an interesting dilemma in terms of just the mid-major versus the underachieving major, but I think you know where a lot of people should stand on it. That's just me. All right. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Stephen Rabinowitz, and I just cursed your bracket in the future. You gotta deal with it. Good luck in March, everyone. To get your curse lifted, like and subscribe to youtube.com/onthesportslines and facebook.com/onthesportslines. And go to other parts of social media if you want the curse to remain, like X/Twitter, Jay.
Yeah, where our handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show, like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I've posted a link to a story by Alex Kirshner of The Athletic on Miami of Ohio that I borrowed from for both my Bubble Watch segment angle and my part of the closer. Give me a second, Anthony. You can give your school some props. The headline of the piece says it all. Miami of Ohio at 31-0 is a perfect college basketball team causing an insufferable debate. One that ties back to the SEC and how much they love to use hypothetical victories to make the case for one of their teams making the postseason when no actual data exists to back it up, or in their minds, refute it. It's a well-written story and well worth the read for anyone who loves March Madness.
Shut up, Anthony. There's still 3/10 of a
No,
second.
no, no, no.
There's,
I won't say
there's
that
still,
then.
and there's
No,
still
no,
a
no.
possible championship tomorrow. So good night from all the sports lights. We'll see you next week.
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.